In this episode of Biblical Unlocks, we will go through a chapter of the Bible and make it make sense in your life today. Studies routinely show that reading your Bible regularly significantly lowers symptoms of depression, anxiety, and anger, whilst also increasing forgiveness, compassion, and a sense of purpose. So if you enjoy episodes like this, please consider following and rating the show. It's free, helps me out a lot, and you can always change your mind later. Enjoy the show. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Biblical Unlocks. Today we're going to go through Exodus chapter 13, and this chapter is going to ask us a lot of questions about who is first in your life? What do you give your utmost attention to? How do you remember your family? Can you follow God's unusual route? And can you carry forth the legacy of faith? All of these questions and more will be answered in today's episode. So let's get stuck into the chapter. I'm going to read verse by verse, and afterwards we're going to go through some deep biblical unlocks. So, verse 1. The Lord said to Moses, verse 2, "Consecrate to me all the firstborn, whether is the first to open the womb among the Israelites of human beings and animals, is mine." Verse 3, Moses said to the people, "Remember this day on which you came out of Egypt, out of the houses of slavery, because the Lord brought you out from there by strength of hand. No leavened bread shall be eaten. Today, in the month of Abib, you're going out. When the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, which he swore to your ancestors to give you, a land flowing with milk and honey. You shall keep this observance in this month. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread, and on the 7th day there shall be a festival to the Lord. Unleavened bread shall be eaten for 7 days. No leavened bread shall be in your possession, and no leaven shall be seen among you in all your territory. You shall tell your child on that day, 'It is because of what the Lord did for me when I came out of Egypt.' It shall serve for you as a sign on your hand and as a reminder on your forehead, so that the teaching of the Lord may be on your lips. For with a strong hand the Lord brought you out of Egypt. You shall keep this ordinance at its proper time from year to year. When the Lord has brought you into the land of the Canaanites, as he swore to you and to your ancestors, and has given it to you, you shall set apart to the Lord all that first opens the womb. All the firstborn offspring of your livestock that are male shall be the Lord's. But every firstborn donkey you shall redeem with a sheep. If you do not redeem it, you must break its neck. Every firstborn male among your children you shall redeem. When in the future your child asks you, 'What does this mean?' you shall answer, 'By strength of hand the Lord brought us out of Egypt, from the house of slavery. When Pharaoh stubbornly refused to let us go, the Lord killed all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from human firstborn to the firstborn of animals. Therefore I sacrifice to the Lord every male that first opens the womb, but every firstborn of my sons I redeem. It shall serve as a sign on your hand and as an emblem on your forehead, that by strength of hand the Lord brought us out of Egypt." Verse 17, When Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them by way of the land of the Philistines, although that was nearer. For God thought, if the people face war, they may change their minds and return to Egypt. So God led the people by the roundabout way of the wilderness bordering the Red Sea. The Israelites went up out of the land of Egypt, prepared for battle. And Moses took with them the bones of Joseph, who had required a solemn oath of the Israelites, saying, "God will surely come to you, and then you must carry my bones with you from here." They set out from Succoth and camped at Etham on the edge of the wilderness. The Lord went in front of them in a pillar of cloud by day to lead them along the way, and in a pillar of fire by night to give them light, so that they might travel by day and by night. neither the pillar of cloud by day nor the pillar of fire by night left its place in front of the people. Alright, time for some deep biblical unlocks. If we go through verse by verse, in verses 1 to 10, what do we see? God tells Moses to consecrate every firstborn, both the men and the animals, to the Lord. And the people must redeem. What does that mean? Redeem. Redeem means buy back. Buy back the firstborn of humans and animals with money or a substitute. And because the Lord had slain the firstborn of Egypt and claimed Israel's firstborns for himself, the instruction is a remembrance, a holy day to remember what the Lord did. So you shall be a people holy to the Lord. Okay, now what's the significance of the firstborn? And this actually links to what is called firstborn theology. In the ancient Near East, so where this is taking place, the firstborn child had the primacy of inheritance, or what is called the birthright, and they had priestly significance. So the most valuable thing that you have is your firstborn child, because that is your heir. That is who's going to continue your legacy and lineage. And by consecrating Israel's firstborn child to God, Yahweh is reclaiming that primacy over what people value most. In redemption practice, right, not every firstborn is killed. That is to say, God's act of slaying the Egyptian firstborn is commemorated by redeeming Israel's firstborn. So it's actually a reversal. So what Egypt lost by death, Israel consecrates and redeems to God. And the greatest thing in your possession belongs to God. And that's God's way of redeeming his people. And you also have the memory here. That is to say, the consecration is tied to the remembrance. That is, to live as a holy people is to live in remembrance of what the Lord God has done. And this is why we still remember certain observances, even in the Christian calendar, such as Good Friday, Ash Wednesday, Palm Sunday. These sorts of events are really important because we need to remember what God has done for us in order that we may see the truth of his truth and glory of his name. Okay, so that was verses 1 to 10. Let's go through verses 11 to 16. God prescribes some practical rules to ensure that this memory will continue to persist. And then whenever the Lord actually brings them into the promised land, the land of Canaan, the land flowing with milk and honey, they must remove leaven for 7 days and explain to their children, it was with a mighty hand the Lord brought us out. And the law, therefore, functions as a memory, a memorial of what happened, and also as a teaching tool. It teaches, it passes down through generations, and it actually sets up the biblical basis for catechesis. That is to say, parents teaching their children about what God has done in their lives and how God's hand acts decisively to secure and protect Israel. So this is really important. And here we also see the idea of teaching children, but also the text explains that this teaching is necessary because Pharaoh hardened his heart. And it's really, it's critical to understand that God acts even when rulers refuse or resist to act, and that God has control of even the most powerful and mighty rulers. And this is going to become important later throughout Israel's history, that if you trust in the Lord and not put your trust in dust, that is, in earthly authorities, you'll be able to succeed and you will be able to be carried through and delivered from whatever trials and tribulations you may face. Verses 17 to 22, we see that God actually directs Israel through a route not the shortest route, I must say, to the promised land. They traveled through Philistine territory because the Lord feared that they might change their minds and return to Egypt in battle. So God actually leads them by a longer way through the wilderness by a pillar of cloud by day and by fire by night. And the last verse notes that Moses took the bones of Joseph, right, which has been kept by his family since Genesis, and we can read through that. It's in Genesis chapter 50, verse 24 to 26. And because Israel promised Joseph that they would carry the bones of Joseph into the promised land because he was looking forward to the promised land. And God's route, you can see here, it prioritizes spiritual formation and dependence over immediacy. That's the most important thing. He will lead with a visible presence. He's the living, guiding God, a pillar of cloud by day and fire by night. God does not want you to walk alone. He will be with you. Even if you can't see him, he will be with you, there to protect you, lead you, shelter you. You do not walk alone. God goes before you. But you must trust in his plan, not your own. You might have to be going through a wilderness in order to reach the promised land. But the wilderness is where you will have your spiritual formation. The wilderness is where spiritually you will be formed and protected and sharpened. So I do want to read, just because this is important, I'll read what Joseph requested at the end of Genesis. So it's Genesis chapter 50, verse 24 to 26. This is what he requested. Genesis 50:24. Then Joseph said to his brothers, I am about to die, but God will surely come to you and bring you up out of this land, to the land that he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. So Joseph made the Israelites swear, saying, When God comes to you, you shall carry up my bones from here. And Joseph died, being 110 years old, and he was embalmed and placed in a coffin in Egypt. So that's what that means. That's where it comes from. Genesis 50, 24 to 26 is where we had that. Okay, I just want to go through the key things to remember from this chapter. First thing is, God has a lot of priority, a lot of importance that he places on remembrance, remembering what God has done for you. And this idea of remembering is actually going to become really important, especially when we consider our sin. That is to say, when I was reading this book by Saint Augustine, it's called Confessions. It's really good. And he's basically going through his life and he's confessing his sin. But something which is really important is that Augustine never thought of God without thinking of his sin. But he never thought about his sin without thinking about Jesus Christ. The way one stays humble is by thinking and considering the ways in which you have faltered, the way in which you have succumbed to sin. And by remembering that, you don't beat yourself up, but you say, thank the Lord, for a wretched man like me has been saved by the blood of the Lamb. These ideas of a ritualistic remembrance is going to form the basis of the memory, and also remembering who we are and what we can be and who God is. And that's something that's really important that we need to remember. Furthermore, God leads visibly and personally. The pillar of cloud and fire shows that there is divine accompaniment. He's going to guide and protect his people. And even though God's chosen route may be longer through the wilderness, or, it's all for a purpose. It's designed to form faith, and it's designed to prevent you from giving up early. So all of the moments in our lives which seem unintentional and completely random may actually be God's way of guiding you to the promised land through the wilderness. So that's it for this episode of Biblical Unlocks. This show is designed to help you keep up your habit of reading the Bible, understanding the Bible, and applying it in your daily life. I upload daily, so if you don't want to miss tomorrow's episode, feel free to rate the show and follow. Otherwise, just have a blessed day. And always remember, if you're not in your word, you're in your feelings. Godspeed.